We're going to call the meeting to order. Let's start with roll call.
Jimenez?
Present.
Foley? Here. Davis? Here. Kamei? Cohen?
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, welcome to the May 10th meeting of the Rules and Open Government Committee and Committee of the Whole. We will start with our review of the agenda for the May 16th meeting. We have posted times of 9:30 for closed session and 1:30 for open session. We have some ceremonials and then consent on pages 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, 11 items. For strategic support, we have our first public hearing on the operating capital budgets and Measure E allocation. We have a loan for multifamily housing project. Actually, two of those. Section numbers 3.4 and 3.5. Section 5, our vehicle blight status report. Section 6, long-term renewable energy contract with PG&E, and then also the solid waste customer service rates, and then deferring section 8 and no land use. So let's go to public comment.
Paul?
Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. There's two things that, from a Mexicano perspective, that concern me. Number one is the closure of the San Pedro Street. This is profiteering at the expense of my community. I mean, there's no way to separate the fact that you didn't have a closure of San Pedro before COVID. It was my community that bore the most significant death and increased poverty, as well as fear and COVID infections, while at the same time, this council was instituting these closures so that other people could profit from that. You can't separate the two. And that's why it troubles me sometimes, because the council continues to attempt to shut me down when I start talking about a particular issue that, in your opinion, is off the mark. But it's not, because it's connected, and you never allow for me to continue my train of thought so that I can conclude it. We get 2 minutes. So while there's differences of, I mean, I don't expect a Jewish white man to understand what it means to be Chicano, or from that or any kind of policy issues from that perspective. The second item had to do with, oh man, I forgot it. I'll stay on that one. Is that we have to understand that the profiteering from death, from COVID infections, and from increased poverty really challenges the moral authority that you try to exercise from this council. Thank you.
Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Hopefully my Zoom connection will be better at this time. I'd like to add to Paul's words what he was first talking about at public comment time. Also, I wanted to speak on items, several items, a few on consent. The first one is about ending the emergency terms of COVID issues. I'm wondering, with the issues going on at the county level, that they no longer have Zoom broadcasts available. I think those Zoom broadcasts are really doing an interesting thing. Is there a way to continue a state of emergency for just the Zoom meeting process for council public meetings? To figure out those sort of ways of working, I hope can be addressed. You have a few issues about clean energy. Man, rules and open government, my connection was really bad last week. I had a ton of things to say, and I couldn't say it. My words weren't going well. About clean energy issues, I have a real concern, again, that being a part of the city manager's office work, giving her policy decision-making power, in 5 years' time, it could be good for now, but in 5 years' time, I don't think that's the right strategy. We need to really learn how to be really expressive and emotive and give our positive good selves what we honestly think is the future of community energy and the really good stuff. And we're heading down a road that's really bureaucratic and governmental, and it's meant for the community. And we got to work on how to do that better. There was an item about Black April that I just wanted to offer that Peter Ortiz, Council President Ortiz, offered some incredibly decent words a few weeks ago that I hope it can be a time we can work as one towards our issues. With that in mind, good luck how the country of Vietnam and the country of the USA can work together in a
Back to the committee.
All right, are there any comments or a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, if there's no other questions from the council, we'll vote.
Can I give a shout out for the Girl Scouts who are up in our chambers?
Oh,
Welcome,
hey.
Girl Scouts.
I don't even look up, so I didn't even notice. But thank you for recognizing them. Thank you for being here.
Motion
In the
passes
meantime,
unanimously.
yes, in the meantime, Councilmember Kamei joined us, so the vote was 5-0. Now we'll move on to the agenda on May 23rd. This one's noticed right now for 9:30 closed session, 1:30 open, and we're going to cancel the evening session because there's no items for land use. We have ceremonial items, and then consent starts on page 6. Goes through 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 17 items on consent. Strategic support, we have the biennial ethics review. And then under transportation, contract for package 2 for BART to Silicon Valley. Streets resurfacing north project. And another local streets pavement contract. Section 8 will be the San Pedro Street status report. And then another tax-exempt housing bond. And then the annual action plan for block grant from community development. And I think that's the last item. So we'll move to public comment on the May 23rd agenda.
Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman. You have a lot of items about the airport on the May 23rd agenda. Just to mention the BART Phase 2 project, you're going to be talking about that issue. A real good luck how I've learned that the tunneling issues can't start until at least the summer of 2024 to get the equipment out over here and stuff. And a real good luck how to make those sort of issues clear to ourselves. You guys have a real way to make things very fuzzy and vague, as if everything can be in motion and in flowing, and there's always a chance and a choice in our future about how things can happen sooner rather than later. But when you give very specific ideas to things like what to expect by the summer of 2024 with tunneling issues, then we can act more appropriately and accordingly in how to think and function. And that brings up concepts of public safety and just our overall better decency that, and how we've decided about the future of the tunneling issues overall. I think we've all breathed a real sigh of relief in how we've chosen the new tunnel system at this time. We need to work towards those kind of good things and be clear with each other and not be so vague all the time. And good luck how you can do that with this BART project in all its forms. I still have 30 seconds, surprisingly, which is nice. There was a few other items I wanted to talk about. I may not have enough time for that. I think that's about all. I said a lot on this item. Thanks for your time.
Paul?
Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. The tax exemptions that you're giving for the properties in the Sonoma area, the city can't afford them. There's been a history of too many tax exemptions for these types of properties. Look at the people that are going to be living in those properties. They're not. This is a bending of the law and using the law in order to subsidize developers that are going to capitalize on that and make a significant profit. Those profits could have went back into the coffers of the city. Now the city is we're going to experience a recession within the next 3 years. The next 36 months, there's going to be a poverty. And these are waves. First you had COVID, then you're going to have the recession. Squeeze the city. So we're not exactly in a position to be giving tax exemptions to build housing that is going to house people that can afford. From San Jose, like I said, you guys think that you can just if we don't acknowledge the truth, it doesn't exist. Consider looking for
Paul, we're losing. Paul, we've lost your audio. Okay, back to council.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions for the agenda on the 23rd? We had talked before about start time, but we're all good with 1:30, I think, right?
Yeah, we were originally going to propose 11 a.m., but there was a few things that slipped, and given the cancellation of the night meeting and no land use items, I think 1:30 is would be our recommendation.
All right, thank you.
There will be 11 a.m. meetings coming soon.
In that case, I move approval of the agenda and including the cancellation of the evening session.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's move on to a vote. All right, motion carries 5-0. That brings us to our consent calendar. We have, looks like 6 items on consent, and we'll start with public comment.
Paul?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 6 items on Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. 6 items on consent. The rules in open government are to really actually, kind of like in an informal level, to discuss these issues that are going to eventually appear on our agenda. This is a very powerful committee because it actually sets the agenda. And so when you're running through, and this has happened since there is a new chair. The last administration, as corrupt as it was, it didn't do this. And so there has to be a metric that the public can challenge, as to what is the criterion that is used in order to put something on consent. And here's a criterion that Robert Medford used. What he said in the Planning Commission is that if there's no public interest or the public doesn't show an interest in a particular issue, then it automatically goes on consent because it's really not, something that really necessitates discussion. This is what he said. And so I'm troubled by that because the public doesn't know really what they should know or shouldn't know. And so they can't ask those questions because they don't know enough about something that they should know, but you haven't notified them of. And I think that's the convolution and the vague kind of responses that Blair was referencing earlier. And so It's a corruption, and it's done intentionally, and that's the dangerous part. That is extremely dangerous to do this to a citizen.
Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Nice words by Paul. You know, there's a lot of consent calendar items I want to speak on today, and I wanted to speak on the monthly auditor's report, but I can't because I got to cover other topic matter. Maybe in the future, the monthly audit report can have its own subsection in the future off of consent when it's really crowded. Today, I guess I'll just talk about public record issues. One item is about Verizon placing, broadband in local neighborhoods. Thank you so much that you are doing this. You know, when back in 2014, you guys were doing this all the time, and you'd always, every week, would have where new broadband was going up. You don't do that as much anymore. I hope you can make a return to doing that. And good luck how broadband installers can make their notification process really clear. Because by doing that, those are the simple steps towards openness and accountability that works both ways. It works to further install broadband and yet practices the good practices of openness and accountability. Then we're knowing we're doing the good thing by making sure our broadband installers have good notification practices. You guys don't always keep up with that. Try to work on that if as needed. And then I wanted to comment on the letter to the about the blight issues that I want to very much respect, and that you're going to have an upcoming council item on that where they can make their voice more clear. I think it's next week. It's my feeling, for as much as you talk about, you know, the law enforcement with blight issues, you don't talk about solutions. You don't talk about the humanistic side of what will be upcoming. For as much as we want to do the law enforcement things in a new mayoral administration, it's now time we have to start transitioning to a holistic approach to how to talk about these sort of things and not just one side or the other. Good luck how to balance and bring.
Call-in user 1.
Yeah, hi, Martha O'Connell. I'd like to address the letter in the public record by Brenda Doman. I have been telling you this. Joe Borders has been telling you this. Lots of other people have been calling in and saying the same thing. Third paragraph, she talks about suggestions and concerns were completely ignored and discouraged by the housing department who were running these meetings. It was as if we weren't in the room, we were being ghosted. Brenda, this has been happening for years in meetings held by the housing department. I would also like to urge the council to make sure that in these meetings for the recruitment of the housing director, that they all be Zoom meetings. I don't need to go through the long list of the people who need them, including the immunocompromised, those who lack transportation, childcare issues. You all know this. It is not difficult for someone to bring a laptop into those meetings. Councilperson Foley was doing hybrid meetings at cafes, and she had a laptop. So we need to ensure that all of these meetings have a Zoom option, because right now I believe there's only one, and that is not sufficient, that is not diverse. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
All right, is there a motion on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's vote. Consent calendar is approved 5-0. So now let's move on to the first memo in section C. This is the Board of Fair Campaign Political Practices revisions recommendations. So I'll turn this over to the city attorney, let her introduce the item.
Thank you, Councilmember Cohen. The memo and the items we're bringing forward, the changes to the municipal code and a resolution stem from recommendations that have come from the board and changes they wanted to see. These were, they go back a couple years and then they were added to, but it's been a while before these got brought forward. But these are all things that the board would like to see. And I think they're outlined in the memo fairly clearly. But that is what we're bringing forward and why. These are recommendations of the board.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with public comment on this item.
Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you. It sounds like with this item and the following item, you're trying to address concepts of money and to take kind of a money concept out of the election process as much as you can. And thank you. That's really nice of you that you're working on this because it's an important concept. I've talked a lot lately about the importance of the participatory process of government and community and what our future, what's really possible for our future. And these are the steps to work towards that. And, you know, with a lot of items, I hope we're really considering the participatory democracy process as a good, as good new avenues that are possible and available to us. And an interesting future is possible, and you're helping that happen with these sort of standards. So thank you, and good luck in our continuing efforts to be. We need to find new balances of representational democracy and participatory democracy, and these are the ways to do it. Thank you.
Paul, followed by Kira.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Sort of from the horseshoe. That explanation was inadequate, and it was insufficient to address what's really happening within the nonprofit organizations. This has everything to do with nonprofits. What's happened is this. Let me give you a concrete example. Vegelution, Si Se Puede Collective, and Somos Mayfair specifically. What they did is they stacked their advocacy was ramped up. They extracted political power by siding with Google. They are the ones that collected all the data from the east side, fed it to Google, then Google fed that information back to the council when they signed that agreement for the $200 million. Then what happened is they stacked that, Peter Ortiz stacked his committee, his staffing has Somos Mayfair employees, previous employees. So now he has people on his staff that work for Somos, facilitated that $200 million deal. Then what you have is that Somos Mayfair is now also has stacked that committee that you convened in order to distribute that $200 million. There's people from Somos Mayfair on that committee. So what I'm asking the city attorney to do is to make this retroactive. I would like a clause in there to make this retroactive for 6 years, ever since the non-disclosure agreement was signed. That's the point, because it was when that non-disclosure agreement was signed that it activates Si Se Puede and Vegelution and Somos, because their budgets exponentially increased after that. So they profited from those relationships. The relationships that you're trying to mend with this, but you don't have the courage to be honest about it. So
Kira, followed by Jeffrey.
Hi, this is Kira Kazantzis from Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits. I submitted a letter earlier today, and I know it's a little late, and so I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at it, but kind of in a nutshell, it asked that that the committee defer action on the nonprofit exemption change until there's an opportunity to outreach to the nonprofit community. This change is news to us, and we haven't really had a chance to analyze it. I would just say, like, first blush, it feels a little off. I was not, when I left City Hall, I did not go to work for a nonprofit that was subject to the exemption. So I did go to City Council to get an exception from the revolving door ordinance. Since then, maybe some folks would argue with this, but I think a lot of the work that I've personally done and my organization has done is very much aligned with city values and city priorities around housing and around food and other things. And putting a barrier up to that doesn't seem super smart. And it seems very much different from what a for-profit organization would do with the information they gained at City Hall. I'd like a chance for our nonprofit community to think this through and to have a conversation with the commission and with ultimately city council about the pros and cons of making this change. Thank you.
Jeffrey?
Sorry, there took a second. Thank you, members of the committee. Yeah, I'd like to echo Kira's comments. Certainly, the city's always thoughtful in as we look at policy making that's going to impact a particular segment of the community, to do outreach, to consider alternatives. While I think as an organization, working partner, or sorry, this is Jeffrey Buchanan, on behalf of Working Partnerships USA. As an organization, we haven't necessarily taken a position on this issue. We do think it's worth a deferral for further consideration and outreach to discuss this with the nonprofit community. Secondly, amongst the changes that were suggested in the draft ordinance, I'm a little bit concerned around item D, the city clerk being authorized to dismiss complaints without prejudice that do not satisfy the requirements of this section or outside the jurisdiction of the commission. Certainly don't want to see time necessarily wasted with frivolous complaints, but I would be concerned that the commission, should be able to have some kind of check on that. We would, not to say that we would expect anything from our clerk's office that would, stop complaints from making their way to the commission, but just would want to make sure if that authority was extended, that there was some way to have a check if there were, in fact, maybe complaints that were filed that there may be differences of opinion on whether or not they meet those standards. Realize there's often a lot of gray areas in terms of complaints that come before the commission. So just encourage additional.
Back to the committee.
All right. Comments, questions from colleagues on the committee?
Yeah, I guess I have a question. Maybe it wasn't totally clear. I read both items very quickly. I might have missed it, but when are we recommending for this to be brought before the full council?
This is on the going on the May 23rd agenda.
All right. I'm trying to think of how far out that is. That's a few weeks out.
It's
2 weeks.
Yeah, it would be these were both recommended to be approved and brought on the May 23rd agenda. This item and the one following, which will be dealt with separately.
Right. Okay. I guess I appreciate everything that's in the memorandum. In looking at them, actually we're talking about the first one, but it stood out to me that there's probably some work I suspect each office, or my office specifically, is going to need to do around understanding these a little bit better on both items. And so I'd be curious to hear from the rest of the committee as to whether we think we want to push it out a little bit more, maybe a week more, just to give us a little bit more time to do some of the work.
And Councilmember Cohen, may I add that on the 23rd, also right now on that agenda, is the biennial ethics review, part of which covered public records. And so part of that, we had it in with the board changes, but it really didn't come from the board. So we put it back over into the biennial ethics review. But it is the idea of not having appeals of Public Records Act responses that involve attorney-client privilege going to the board. That rests with the council, and we had an experience last year where the board couldn't even see the materials. It didn't make sense for the appeal to go there, and at the time, council had asked us to address that. So that's also going on the 23rd. Not that they have to all be aligned, but that's part of the reason we're bringing everything.
The idea was to bring all things related to ethics and elections on the 23rd, but that's not necessary, right? Okay.
Correct.
Other questions? I don't have seen any hands up. But
I just wanted to note that one of the commissioners is in the public side if you needed to ask any questions of the commission.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to weigh in on scheduling. I think the 23rd is our last meeting in May, if I'm not mistaken, because we've got Memorial Day on the 29th, and then we don't have the 30th, and then we get into June, which those are all early meetings. I know because I've got the invocations in June, and we're always having to reschedule with our invocation people. So I think we should keep it on the 23rd, just for scheduling purposes.
Councilmember Foley, I see your hand on your button, so I'm.
Given the budget or the discussion that's going to be coming in June on the budget and how long those meetings would be, it makes sense to hear this on the 23rd, or then again or then not until August, but I think August is too late. So it just makes sense that we hear it on the 23rd, even though it doesn't give us a lot of time, our colleagues enough time to maybe research the issues, but I'm more concerned about having a robust conversation and having it done before we break for July and then coming back in August and having the discussion then. I don't think we should put this discussion off till then. So with that, do you need a motion then? Go ahead.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Kamei.
Thank you. I just want to get clarity on the timing, in terms of the urgency of having it. I don't know if there was any outreach to others in the community as this thing came forward. So I was just curious about, when we need to have this by. It sounded from Councilmember Foley's, she'd rather have it earlier rather than later. And I don't know how the budgeting schedule goes in June, if it goes all the way through the last.
Yes.
Oh, okay, well, thank you. But I just wanted to understand the urgency of having this in place.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And you're asking about the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices recommended revisions. They've been around for a while. They're and been considered by the board for a while, and I'm sure the board member can provide more background on that. The nonprofit exemption started with a review by the city auditor in 2017. And it was recommended that that go to the board. The board looked at it and considered it, and then along with some other things over time was making recommendations. So some of these have been around for quite some time, and it's just been a matter of getting them collected and brought forward. Another one of them addresses amounts that candidates can loan to their campaign committees, and a change that's recommended there. I don't know, that may be the timing may be important on that, because it's going to take 30 days for an ordinance to go into effect. We have to have a second reading and then wait 30 days, and so there may be some issues with that also. Lee may know more, but those are some of the considerations.
I was just going to ask to help. I think, obviously, with the election cycle next year being changed to March, fundraising obligations and the time start in August. So election things would need to move forward now, but I think to the Vice Mayor's question, does the revolving door and nonprofit thing have a date for which it needs to go before the end of the fiscal year?
Again, I would defer to the board to some extent, but I don't think there is an immediate timing issue on it, other than these are things they considered quite a while ago and wanted brought forward. So, but that does not have the same
Urgency.
August countdown, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. And, I could also understand that, if it's been around for a while and, it just hasn't come to us, that's why I asked about the urgency. I could understand the urgency on the fundraising part, because that will happen in August and you do need the 30 days and all of that. I'm just wondering if there would be consideration on, sort of like separating the two and allowing at least the ability for those who would be either affected by this or have that, sort of that they'd want to participate in giving us further thoughts on it. And I don't know if the board members if they want to give us thoughts on the urgency of having this today rather than some other time, because it seems to me that we do work with a lot of nonprofits, and it's quite significant.
And Vice Mayor, obviously rules can decide when it's going to come forward, or if you want to bring part of it forward now and part of it defer it for another date. That's up to the committee.
So I was going to suggest also, since our board member's with us, to hear a little bit about their rationale for the recommendations and what they think the timeline should be and whether there's any urgency, just to get the input from the board.
Okay, I've just brought Tom Pavel over as a panelist. So Tom, you can go ahead.
Hello. Hopefully you can hear me okay. This is Tom Pavel. I wasn't prepared for speaking today, but so I think overall, I don't think there's any particular urgency from our end on the nonprofit issue. I think it's, as described, it's sort of part of a biannual cycle of a collection of revisions that is part of the charge of our board to bring suggestions for revisions to the municipal code and so forth. Let's see. What was the other question? Was framing the overall set of
yeah, I mean, maybe that was kind of my question. I have some uneasiness about the nonprofit recommendation in general, and was curious if you wanted to provide any context for that, or wanted to wait until we have a further council discussion to add that context. But that might be helpful to hear the rationale from the committee.
So this one mostly predates my tenure on the board, which has been only a year. But I think the idea was to make equivalent the restrictions on lobbyists, whether they be for profits or nonprofits, particularly with political action, nonprofit political action committees and such. So it seemed to be fair to apply the same criteria for whether it's a profit business or nonprofit business if they have lobbying before the city council.
All right, thank you. It looks like our auditor Joe has made his way down. He'd like to also weigh in, since I think this initiated from one of his audits. So we'll let him answer.
Great, thank you.
Joe Roy, City Auditor. So the nonprofit piece did originate from an audit from our office from back in 2017. And just to clarify, the reason behind the recommendation is that this was an audit of open government, and we were looking at some of the lobbyist disclosures and some of the revolving door pieces. And what we found was in the Muni Code that an individual goes work for a nonprofit, and I want to be clear that when we're talking about working for them, it's only in situations where someone leaves city employment to lobby or work on legislative or administrative matters that directly relate to their work while they were with the city. If they go to a nonprofit that had received city funding or resources, they were exempt from the revolving door ordinance. If they went to a nonprofit that did not receive city funding, then they were subject to the revolving door ordinance and would need to seek an exemption. I see everybody's faces, it makes no sense. So we had a recommendation saying, let's clarify this so all the nonprofits are either treated the same, whether they receive city funding or not, or strike that altogether and just treat all outside entities the same. And it was an either or, and we brought that to council in 2017. Council gave me that same look and said, let's send this over to the board of the board, and let them see what they want to do. And that has, over the last 6 years, trickled back to council. And So that was the purpose of the recommendation, to treat all the nonprofits the same, or to strike that to treat out all outside entities. And I'll just repeat, if someone left to work for an organization that was receiving city funding, they were exempt from the revolving door ordinance. Under those circumstances where they're going to work in a situation, either lobbying or administrative matters, directly related to their former employment, they're exempt if they received funding, or if the nonprofit received funding, but they had to seek a revolving door waiver if it was a nonprofit that did not receive city funding. So that was the purpose of the recommendation, and that's what would get cleared up.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification, and trickle was an operative word in there as well. It's taken a while to get back to council. Before, I know Councilmember Jimenez has his hands up. I'll go to him in a second. My feeling is that it's reasonable for us today to move this forward just for the sake of discussion and thinking about it, and then having time, within whatever Brown Act groups we all have, to discuss what we think makes sense and doesn't, and bring recommendations, or a recommendation to defer part of it that we think might need to defer. But we can do that at the council meeting in 2 weeks as well. That's how I think about it. But anyway, now we'll hear what Councilmember Jimenez has to say.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Yeah. No, meaning that, it can come before us if at that time we hear something that maybe you get a sea of nonprofit sort of folks saying we didn't have enough time to vet this, that we can at that time, if we choose, to defer a portion of this and have that discussion later. But some of the election-related stuff, campaign-related stuff, I think thank you, I don't know if it was Councilmember Foley, but that mentioned this, or it might have been Lee, but to get these out before the election cycle begins, I think is going to be very important. So I'm actually open or okay with having this heard on the 23rd.
All right, any other comments or questions before I entertain a motion? I think Councilmember Foley was about to make a motion and didn't before.
Move to...
Second.
And add it to the 23rd agenda.
Second.
All right. I don't think we have any more comments, so we'll move to a vote on this one. All right, the motion carries 5-0. Look forward to the conversation in a couple weeks. And now we're on to the other memo. We'll let Nora also introduce this one before we go to public comment.
Thank you again, Chair Cohen. This is a series of 4 changes to Title 12 of the San Jose Municipal Code. It stems from a memo that the Rules Committee approved, directing my office to return to the council with an ordinance that would address the definition of candidate in the San Jose Municipal Code. The set some rules for candidate-controlled committees. In reality, the Title 12 refers to controlled committees, and changing the definition of candidate to include electeds, current electeds, as well as candidates and staff, and it aligns that definition with the State Political Reform Act. For whatever reason, the definition of candidate, and we've not been able to determine why that happened, and we think it may have just been a mistake in the drafting initially, because everything else seems to follow the State Political Reform Act, but the definition of candidate does not. And so it's led to some issues over the last few years. So it would change the definition of candidate to align with the State Political Reform Act. That would then affect controlled committees, which are in essence candidate-controlled committees. And it would clarify, once the definition of candidate is changed, that candidate-controlled committees includes both direct and indirect control by a candidate or an elected official. And then this also contains a revolving door piece, and this piece would have a 1-year prohibition on former city officers and staff from working on independent expenditure committees following termination with the city. That was also part of the direction that came last November through the memo that came to rules from Councilmember Esparza. We attempted, and I want to be clear that this is addressing not every independent expenditure committee that might be based in the city or have interests on city election items. It's addressed to candidate-controlled committees, and there are there is the allowance for electeds to use campaign contributions to be given to expenditure committees, and that's allowed. But what we were asked to do is apply the city's contribution timeframes and contribution limits to those to the monies that are going from the sitting elected or the candidate to the independent expenditure committee. So it doesn't, as I say, it doesn't affect every independent expenditure committee in the city, but it's just those candidate-controlled committees. There is an issue, some of you may be familiar with the decision sought by former Mayor Reed from a Superior Court in Sacramento when he wanted to use some money that he had sitting in his campaign account and give it to an expenditure committee. That was a decision by a Superior Court in Sacramento. It was never appealed. The FPPC has indicated that they don't believe that the decision is binding. We are aligning these rules to the, as I say, to the state definitions. And the state also appears to indicate that any local campaign contribution rules can be applied to this scenario. And so that's how this is drafted. But as I think you all know, there are also ongoing changes at the federal level, particularly on expenditures and limitations on expenditures. But this is really a limitation on, since the money is coming from the elected's account and or the campaign account, if you will. These aren't office holder accounts, these are campaign accounts, and they're subject to the city's rules anyway, in terms of when you can start raising money and how much you can raise. So that is the limitation that's built in terms of what you can give as a candidate to an expenditure committee, candidate-controlled expenditure committee. So that's it's tough sledding, I know, but that's the gist of what we were asked to do, and we've attempted to do it in a way that is consistent with the request and also consistent with the law.
All right, thank you for that explanation. So with that, we'll go to public comment.
Blair, followed by Jeffrey.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Boy, I lack a very serious amount of depth on these issues. So on my previous item, I think more spoke to this item, and but still, I did not do very well to try to bring out fruit from this item. How to better talk about it. I can talk about it in terms of the importance of the participatory process, and that to make the candidate process available more in the future to people who it's not currently available to should be important goals. And I don't quite know if this item is working towards that or not. And on the previous item, our nonprofit system has such a way of working that I think many were pretty satisfied with it. And I hope it won't have to, you're trying to define things that I hope you're just looking, you're not looking for a problem to find a solution to, that there's real need for it. And I think there's also a sense that some nonprofits do really important good work already, and we shouldn't have to mess with that system, I don't think. I'm guessing, just thoughts, I guess, and I hope this can help, and good luck how you're going to address this issue. Again, how to make the future of the process more available to people who it's not available to now. How do we continuously work towards those sort of goals? If this item is working towards that, that hopefully can be a good guide marker for yourself. Thank you.
Jeffrey, followed by Paul.
Members of the committee, first I'd like to thank the city attorney's office for their work on this issue. Would encourage the committee to vote to place it onto the agenda for the 23rd. So as I think many folks on committee have stated already, we can review and vote on this and hopefully have it in place before the fundraising period begins for the March primary. There are a couple issues, I think technical issues that are worth considering as council takes this item up on the 23rd. One being making sure now that we've taken the time to look to the Political Reform Act and how we define a candidate-controlled committees, that we're also perhaps looking to the Political Reform Act and how we define agent. I think it's important for our city to maintain the highest of standards when it comes to open government and ethics and strong campaign finance laws, making sure that we're really holding ourselves to a higher standard that both for candidates, current city officials, and their staff, that we are considering how we apply this framework. And so we'll be providing some comments, around how do we make sure that we're properly defining agent in a way where we don't have additional loopholes to how this is implemented. Appreciate all the work by staff, and as I said, we'll be presenting some additional comments as working partnerships as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Paul, followed by Colin, user 1.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. I think what's being challenged, first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Pavel for chiming in, and especially Joe Royce. You guys do not pay him enough. I suggest a pay raise for City Auditor Joe Royce. I want to thank him for his work. He doesn't take one side or another. He's always on time in presenting a very neutral, very objective perspective of the corruption that's going on in our city. Now, that's not opinion. What he's doing is he's putting in information I already know, but I'm not on the inside to really tease it out. And so that's why a city auditor's position is critically important from the public's perspective. Now, this is to protect our ex-mayor. Okay, because what he did with that common good sense action committee, it's a bunch of attorneys corrupting language, the English language, in order to break the law. And then when they get busted, they just change the law because they have the power to do that. The rest of us, they chase after us with guns and handcuffs. That's what they do. Now, there's this basic assumption that a nonprofit is moral, that is ethical, and is never, ever, ever, it is beyond corruption. There's a basic assumption that needs to be challenged, and I'm glad that it's being challenged now. And because the Chicano movement articulated it beautifully. What they called nonprofits, poverty pimps, because that's what they do. They pimp the poverty that's going on in our communities under the auspices that that they're moral and ethical paragons in the community to serve the community, when in actuality, they are corrupting the very new.
Call in user 1.
Yeah, Martha O'Connell, I would like to agree with the last part of the last speaker's comments. I totally agree. So at one of his last council meetings, I was amused when Sam Liccardo referenced the expert industrial complex and bemoaned that and warned people about it. And I thought, well, where have you been for the last 8 years? Because the city pays way too much money to these experts that come in and tell them what to do. The nonprofits are lobbyists, pure and simple. They make tons of money. The people that run these nonprofits, some of them have been doing this for their entire career. They make great big fat salaries. And I do believe that many of them make their living off the social problems that they purport to address. So anything that is going to bring these people in line and make them more transparent, I am in favor of. Also, as a citizen, and I know other citizens have called in and said the same thing, I deeply resent that somehow the doors of the council are thrown open to these people when they say they're representing a, quote, nonprofit. But citizens, the ordinary citizen, cannot get the same access to the council. So these things are not nonprofit. They are political lobbyists, and many, many of them are making their living off the woes of society that they are purporting to try to solve. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
All right, do we have any, oh, it looks like Councilmember Jimenez has his hand up. Go ahead, Councilmember.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Nora a general question. When this item comes before council, if we desire, because we're essentially opening up Title 12 and making some changes and adjustments, if I had additional recommendations for Title 12 sort of changes, would that be allowable and under your perspective as it relates to the item that's going to come before us?
I'm not sure what you're thinking about in terms of other items, if they're related to these issues or variations on a theme with these issues. That's what's coming to council. If it's other provisions of Title 12, that's probably outside of the scope of this memo and the direction that we got from rules previously.
Okay, all right. I just asked because I look forward to seeing how the conversation is going to go, but I think there's some interest that I have in some sort of exploration about how things can be strengthened in Title 12. So I was just thinking about that, but thank you. And I'll actually move approval for the 23rd.
Any other comments or questions? I am supportive of closing a loophole that has allowed for different types of fundraising to be treated differently. So I look forward to the conversation on the 23rd. Let's move to a vote. All right, motion carries 5-0. Now we're on to open forum.
Blair, followed by Paul.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the meeting today. Interesting item we just had. Thank you. I was, a few things from the committee meeting this morning about the budget issues. My Zoom is getting cut off. I would try to mention again the importance of mixed income ideas, and that by 2029, we're going to be mandated to work on the issues. Why not work on the issues now? It does really interesting, flexible, good things, cooperative things that I hope you can really want to take to heart and learn how to start talking about the subject now. And just talking about it just gets things going. And we don't have to do anything, but it just gets things going. Good luck how to do that. What else did I want to mention? I had a few other items I can't remember. So I guess I'll go on to my main point of today. Oh, I wanted to mention dumpster day issues. Very much of a thank you that in living in San Diego these days, I've been learning the importance of how they talk about their unhoused issues, they want to create good communication. In San Jose, was talked about yesterday how to work towards ideas of trust. The dumpster day issues, I think, is a great way on a Saturday to be a real cooperative effort to bring all parts of a community together. It's been a really good service for San Jose for a number of years that San Diego was mentioning. You know, they're saying they have a really great way to do those sort of things, and they want to emulate that in San Jose. Good luck on how to really work on that kind of stuff. And with my remaining time, 20 seconds, 21 seconds, Paul got cut off yesterday, offering a bit of a strong words to Housing Director Jackie Ferrand, and that comments need to be directed towards the board, which I totally agree and find that good decorum, but there are Brown Act ideas that I hope we can better address about that in the future. Thank you.
Paul, followed by call-in user 1.
Paul Soto from the Horseshoe, page 199 from The Devil in Silicon Valley. Conquest and migration elicited unsavory responses from many San Joseans, and Californians ought to be held accountable for their often violent treatment of Mexican Americans from 1850s forward. Matters of history and memory have taken on new importance as growing numbers of Latinos throughout the United States argue for their political and economic rights. Visions of history guide progressive movements for change, although none today can claim to remember the early strikes of the New Almaden mines. And I interviewed in Valley Homes. Many who shared with me their memories had grown angry, and popular accounts of the region's high-tech growth routinely failed to include any mention of Mexicans or Mexican Americans. Their frustration had been building for years, and local Latinos expressed particular outrage in 1990 when Mayor Tom McHenry proposed a statue commemorating Thomas Fallon, a seldom remembered pioneer, raising the American flag for the first time, declaring war against the Mexicans. Local white elites, by contrast, considered Fallon an inspiring symbol for the developing Silicon Valley economy. Corporate executives railed to support the building of this memorial to the city's manifest destiny. Too ready to promote, no, scratch that. Ethnic Mexicans have clung for generations to their own counter narratives that explain their place in local society. In drawing attention to past farm labor and cannery work, some continue to contest official narratives of Silicon Valley's development. Residents who had been activists in the Chicano movement of the 1960s and 70s have recently led a charge urging the city to pay greater care to Latino history. I'm a son of the Chicano movement. That is why I'm here. And I'm thankful for the city auditor, Joy Royce. You deserve a raise, brother.
Call-in user 1.
Yeah, hi, Martha O'Connell. Something's happening here. I think that's a line from some rock song of a while ago. But there's something that's been happening that is very chilling and very disturbing to me. I studied Judaism for a year when I was considering converting. I did my master's thesis on German fascism, and I have been to Auschwitz and Dachau, and also the Museum of Terror in Hungary. And it is very troubling to me. This is not the first time that comments have been made calling out a council member as a Jewish white man. This should be totally unacceptable in our society and in our city. And yet it happened today, and it's happened on other occasions. So I wish to speak out against that. It is extremely offensive, and I think we need to stop this ranking of ethnicities. My people suffered more than your people, or you don't have any right to speak on this subject because you're white or you're Jewish or whatever the category is. I think across the board, people need to be respected, and no one should have to apologize for being Jewish, white, male, or whatever it is. I've actually heard a speaker who speaks frequently at these meetings about a year ago apologized for being, quote, white, and saying that he didn't feel comfortable talking on the topic. So we need to stop this, and we need to respect each other as individuals, regardless of our religion, gender, or race. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
All right, thank you. With that, we are adjourned.